Good afternoon, everybody. This is Graeme Codrington. On the other side of the screen, we have Stef du Plessis. Stef, we have 40 people who already dived into the room. We're expecting about 60 or 70, so we'll give everybody just a chance to get in. Why don't you hop over quickly to the chat box? I see, Brent, you got in first today. From Rustenburg. It's not often we can say Rustenburg got in first with something, but Brent, you were in first with your hello. Today we've got people in from Cape Town, from Nelspruit, a South African crowd today. If you are from outside of South Africa, please just go across to chat. Let us know where you're in. This is In Conversation with Graeme Codrington, and today we're speaking to one of my very good friends, Stef du Plessis. Stef is one of South Africa's leading experts on employee engagement and workplace culture, and a leadership expert, and I've really been looking forward to this particular webinar. I probably say that every time, but this one is true. You can see Stef's desperate to say something because that's his style. Stef, it's nice to see you. How are you doing in lockdown at the moment, my friend?
Hi, Graeme. Hi, everyone. Hello, Rustenburg. I didn't know we had gone international for Rustenburg. I didn't know there's internet in Rustenburg. It's like having Rustenburg on. Graeme, thanks for having me. Nice to see you. As you say, good mates going back a long time. It's awesome to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
We have Nikki from, and I never know if it's Tanzania or Tanzania. My brain can't work, it can't remember. I think it's Tanzania, right? So there's our real proper international. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Please make sure that you add questions into the chat box as Stef and I chat. We will have an opportunity to take your questions a little bit later. But what I wanted to chat to Stef about, as I said, Stef does a number of different things. But what I've seen Stef do recently, attending a workshop, Stef, is you were chatting to people about employee engagement. And I must say, you showed a slide which frankly scared me. It was a slide of research that you and your team have done around employee engagement and the difference between people who are actively engaged and in a range of things to people who are actively disengaged. And honestly, you asked the audience to guess what they thought the percentages were. And I didn't come even close, and you scared me. I know you don't have that slide. We decided to just have a conversation today. But you want to just tell us about
the slide, but let's go there quickly. And I'll back it up with that bit of what everyone is familiar with, Gallup's work. And I suppose Gallup gives the best definitions. Here I am sporting my 9-week-long lockdown haircut, very much like you, I think. So
I just look like Italian mafia at the moment.
Gallup defines the 3 tiers of employee engagement really nicely for me. They talk about engaged employees, and they say that those people have 2 things in common. They are passionate about their work, and they have a profound connection with a brand. Now, Graeme, that's deep, a profound connection with a brand. Often when I'm working with multilingual groups or when I work abroad with people who are translating from my English, I'm asking folk, say profound connection in your mother tongue, or to Afrikaans folk, or to folk in South Africa who speak any of our number of other languages. Translate profound connection to your mother tongue, and it doesn't translate. Now those are people who are engaged. According to Gallup's global research, 70 years old now, 30% of people actively engaged like that. 33, in fact. People who are not engaged. These are the folk who are sleepwalking. They've like opted out. They rock up at work every morning, they go home every night, and they like go through the motions. Gallup doesn't say this. I say that these folk are, they come to work and they do their job based on how the traffic was, or on how their sports team did over the weekend, or now during lockdown, how it's going with homeschooling and all of the other stuff. It's sort of a day-to-day thing. Sometimes they're in the game, sometimes they're not in the game. And then there are those folk who are actively disengaged. And Gallup puts them at about 18%. The bulk, the other 50% or so of people are just clocking in and out. Those people who are actively disengaged, these are the folk who have given up. Now, I don't want to go off tangent here, Graeme. Let's stick to engaging people who we work with. But if we go back to McGregor's leadership model, way back when McGregor said that there are basically two types of leaders: those who believe in the intrinsic good of their people, and those who believe that people have to be governed and controlled. Those who fall into the category of believing that people have to be governed and controlled, those are all the people in the South African context who learned their leadership style when they did national service, back when they did national service. These folk think to themselves that the people who are actively disengaged are lazy or not willing. I think the folk who are actively disengaged have given up because they've been trying to find the help that they need and they don't know where to find it, Graeme. And maybe the question that leaders should ask is, isn't it sad that there are people who have given up? And if they've given up at work, chances are that they've given up in the rest of their life as well. And me as a leader, I would like to know, what is it that causes some of my people to have given up? And what can I do to reignite some of that? And I think we can. But you asked about those three categories and the percentages, and those are them. And Graeme, in the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of organizations that I've worked with over the past 30 years on 5 continents, I find those percentages to actually play out in the workplace. Sometimes you find enterprises.
It's certainly resonated with me, Stef. But 18% of people are actively disengaged. That means they haven't just given up, they might even be sabotaging you, right?
Don't even think about, well, they are sabotaging you, not because they want you to go down. They're sabotaging you because they just don't know better, and they get in the way of the people who are trying to do what they ought to be doing. But again,
surely they bring the rest of the team down with them, though. You can't just ignore one person in every 5, right?
It's worse. They don't only get in the way of functional delivery and output, they influence the frame of mind of other people. Yeah. Because gossip mongering doesn't happen without participants. They have to have someone to Skinner to. For our guest from Tanzania, and by the way, I love working in Tanzania, worked with a big mining outfit there for an extended period, went there so many times. For the folk who not used to our vernacular of Skinner, you know, the back talk, the meeting after the meeting, the passageway talk, the talk that happens at the water cooler. Those people who are actively disengaged need active participants for them to pass that negativity on to, and it influences other people. It's infectious.
Now, I'm guessing, Stef, that in this lockdown time, I know there's different countries going to be watching this video. They've had different experiences of lockdown, but whatever the experience is, there's been some level of disruption, a lot of working from home, a lot of virtual team dynamics. I'm guessing there might be some surprises. So maybe some people who had given up, maybe a few of them found a new lease of life now. They actually found their skills might be useful. So they might have switched quite quickly, but I'm guessing that those numbers are going to be pretty similar. You've still been working with clients during lockdown. Your work on employee engagement is obviously even more important now, I think, and some clients recognize that. Have you seen a shift at all? Do you think that there is still this divide between actively engaged and actively disengaged in a virtual space now?
We've all seen the anecdotal information, the questionnaires that go around. Graeme, you've seen it. I've seen it. The people out on our session this morning have seen it. There is demonstration that most organizations are getting it, that their people can be as effective, if not more so, in a work from home environment. But talking about work from home, if we were using slides today, you want to mention work from home, you show that beautifully aesthetic picture of the top end Apple computer on the desk, and like this clean, sterile environment. When I talk about work from home, I rather show the photograph of the mom with the kids around her ankles and somebody on her lap, or the father trying to take care of homeschooling while he's trying to do his job. Work from home is not that. We all know by now what work from home means, so it's more complicated. However, people are saying they are more productive working from home, and organizations are saying that their people are coming more to the fore. But your question was, what about the folk who are actively disengaged, and would they by some miracle now become more engaged? Well, some of them might experience during this time that their voice counts more, or that they can that they have bigger influence on the team because they are, because some of the gatekeepers between them and their senior decision makers have been taken away, and they have more direct connection with their senior management now, and they're getting noticed. But I think that change happens when it's conscious. All human change happens when it's conscious, when we choose different behaviors, Graeme, which means we have to refigure some of our beliefs and our preconceptions and our biases, which means that we have to explore some of our unconscious biases, which means we have to become conscious of them. And if this was a 5-hour conversation, we wouldn't have enough time.
I'm just going to say, you're getting a bit ahead of me now.
We can touch on some of that. Graeme, yeah. I think that in this time of lockdown and remote working, I'm not the futurist here, but I've agreed with you from day one that this ain't over. Yeah. In fact, at the risk of me trying to say like I am mimicking being a futurist, dude, this ain't even begun yet.
Well, it's not about do my job then, Stef, right at this moment.
It's not about the virus. In my view, Graeme, it's not the virus. It's the economy. It's the people who have lost their jobs. It's the mothers who are the single mothers who are now only getting 70% of their previous wage. It is the Uber driver who has to pay the installment on his car. It is the self-employed nail lady who travels to the fancy houses in Sandton by Uber, and she's no longer... Graeme, the fallout of this is going to be massive, buddy. Yeah. But let's isolate it. Let's talk about the workplace. Is it possible to keep people engaged during this time? Absolutely. We can talk more about that in a moment. Is it possible to recover some of the people who were lost, some of the people who have become actively disengaged? Can we pull them back, even in a virtual environment? Hell yeah. And we can talk about that in a minute or two.
You know what? I don't want to lose the very powerful point that you just made. I mean, I know legendary from our friendship over years, your compassion for the nation, and it just spilled there. I don't want to lose that. I want to come back to that at the end, because I think that we might be able to have a conversation around people who are actively disengaged from our society. So let's pause that. We'll come back to that at the end. The conversation I wanted to have, because the other thing that struck me, so when I sat in the workshop a few months ago and I said, I need everybody to hear what Stef is saying, is first of all that those stats that talked about engagement and disengagement and the way you talk about it, people have heard you now. The next thing you said, though, was interesting to me, because a lot of people consider the culture around workplaces and teams to be soft stuff. It's difficult. You can't pin it down. We don't have the language for it. Yes, you can do employee engagement surveys once a year and people tick happy faces at the end of training. But you passionately believe that there is a way for scientifically for everybody to have the same conversation in a company that literally just uses simple words and phrases. Can you just explain that to us a little bit?
So conversation for another day, and I know that you are a mutual friend of ours, and I hope this is not a spoiler. I know that Steve Simpson, my business partner of 20 years now, and I know that you're having him on in one of your conversations soon, and you and I and Steve work closely in terms of client sharing. We're very familiar with one another's work. So I'll touch briefly on the culture piece. Steve and I have just come minutes before I came on air with you. Is this on air?
Yes,
before I came on camera with you. Minutes before this, Steve and I were running a 2-hour session with one of my clients, a mining company in Zimbabwe. So if there was any possibility that there is a positive effect of the virus, and I don't think there's any positive effect that can come from this, but if there was, there Steve and I are working jointly with this mine in Zimbabwe, where previously we would have had to spend days on planes to be able to get together, to be able to work together like that. Let's get to the point here. You asked about workplace culture. So Steve and I have a construct. We do 2 things. We do employee engagement, helping organizations to get their people on board and on track, helping individuals to do more, be more, and have more, leaders to lead more authentically, teams to develop trust. That's the engagement side. But on the other side of our business, we help companies to drive culture through a construct called UGRs, UGRs. Go look at it. UGRs.net is the website. It stands for Unwritten Ground Rules. I'll see if I can do the 90-second version here, Graeme. Unwritten ground rules sound like this. Somebody in a workplace says or thinks, around here, the only time my boss speaks to me is when I do something wrong. Or around here, when the pressure is on, it's each one for themselves. Those are unwritten ground rules, UGRs. There are UGRs in every team, in every organization, everywhere. We can identify the UGRs, we can assess them, we can frame the positive alternatives, and we can help people to drive behavior towards those positive alternatives, so that when a new employee were to join that team later in life, they would arrive and see the values of the business, not just on the plaque in the foyer, but in motion being lived out. Because people, by the way, people support that which they help to create. And if we get people to co-create what they want the culture in a business to look like, to two outcomes, to achieve their strategic objectives, but also to make it a better place to work. If we can capture people's imagination in what it could look like in such an environment, people will go the hard yards. People will fight for the right culture. And yes, it's a system-driven thing. Graeme, we know this about culture. Until culture is a top 3 strategic priority, until senior leaders are conscious about how their behavior influences, causes, or allows the culture that's there to exist, and until we hold everyone in the organization accountable, by the way, talking about working from home during lockdown in these times, yes, we must demonstrate care and compassion for our people, but we also have to hold them accountable. People need to deliver now more than they ever needed to deliver. Because if we deliver, we can save our organizations. And if we do that, then we will save jobs. So, Graeme, culture is not a soft fuzzy. It is a strategic process. And that's what Steve and I have been doing for the last 20 years, as you know, for some of the world's premier brands. Also for SMMEs, increasingly. And through my association with you. In fact, I'm working with some of your clients right now, where they employ between 50 and 1,500 people. And we are helping them to, in a process-driven manner, create the culture by design. But let's get back to engagement.
Yeah, well, exactly. For me, these two things come together now, especially now that our teams are geographically dispersed. Because a lot of leaders don't realize they actually do have a culture. As you call it, the unwritten ground rules. They've got a staff policy document, they've got a vision statement on the wall, but that's not what guides people's behavior.
Here's how that works, Graeme. In real life, people arrive at a new place of work, and well, anyone watching us today knows that when they last started a new job, they were more quiet on day one than they normally are, because they're busy sussing out what's busy going on. They don't know it consciously, but they're looking for the UGRs. So here's what happens. During your interviews, you were promised all the things about how the company really operates. You join on day one, you go for induction training, and they teach you the values, and then you go to the water cooler, and then you attend your first meeting. And then you get to see what the unwritten ground rules are. And that, by the way, influences employee engagement in a big way, Graeme. It's a circle. Engaged employees can ramp up the culture, but the culture also drives engagement.
So, Stef, what are you seeing then, and what do you expect to see as companies now are realizing that this remote working thing is not just a few weeks? You can't just grit your teeth and power through, and then in June we're going to be all fine again. You know, this is probably 12 to 18 months. This is my job now as a futurist. So I'll put this out. I'm working with companies, helping them to look at scenarios for what happens next and what happens after what comes.
As a pseudo-futurist, I think you are short on your 18 months. But hey, that's just me.
Fair, so the bottom line is it's at least the rest of this year and most of next year. So a lot of companies, I think, are using up the reserve tanks at the moment, and they're not filling up if this is not too stretching an analogy too much, they're not filling up the fuel of engagement at the moment. we're using up people's energy. We're proud of our people because they've been so productive for 8 weeks. What we don't see is they're nearly dead. They can't sleep at night because they're so anxious. Their kids are not sleeping because they are anxious. They've got a friend who's got COVID and is in hospital for it, and they're nervous. They've missed a family wedding. They've got all of this stuff going on, and we just say to them, I'm so proud of your productivity. What's going to happen next, Stef?
Well,
and what leaders need to think about?
Let's back that up first. It got real for me yesterday. I was wondering when COVID was going to get real for me. The brother of a very good friend passed away yesterday from COVID here in Johannesburg.
Wow.
It's real. It's here. It's happening. You asked about people working full tilt now. Well, that really goes back to that old conversation that we've always had about work-life balance, which is a silly conversation. There's no such a thing as work-life balance. The more senior you are, the more you know that work-life balance doesn't exist. I know what I'm going to say in a moment, Graeme, is going to sound like just a phrase. If you're out there watching us, this sounds like just a clever wordplay. It's really not. This is one of the smartest things that I have learned almost ever. One of the cool things about your job and my job, Graeme, is that when we're speaking at conferences and events, we get to hear the other speakers speak. We're sitting through the other presentations. And 20 years ago, I listened to a big name speaker speak on work-life balance. And one phrase changed my whole insight up to this very day. He said that the pursuit of work-life balance just doesn't exist. What you're trying to achieve is work-life integration. So as an aside, like you, Graeme, I'm big on family. I don't measure the worth of my life by my work or by the companies I work with, or by trying to build a decent family. I try to raise kids that would raise decent kids. And now that my kids have kids, I'm seeing that legacy starting to bear some fruit. Why am I telling you that? Because in my many years of the kids growing up, I was always frustrated by, am I giving them enough time? Am I giving them as much as I give my work? What if I fly to go and speak somewhere? Graeme, you know that speaking for a 1 hour event in Spain is a 3-day job. Getting there, doing, like, what about my kids being without me? I then learned that it's not about work-life balance, where the one plays off against the other. It's about work-life integration, that these two things come together. Why am I telling you this? That consciousness in normal environment, let's talk pre-COVID, that awareness enables us to draw parallels between our life and our work. And Graeme, if you want to know the silver bullet to employee engagement, it is to get people to understand that when your job sucks, your life sucks. But that when your job is going better, your life goes better. That the 3 things that most influence how your life is going, in my opinion, the 3 things that most influence how your life is going is your relationship with God or the universe, pick one. Your relationship with your most loved ones. Graeme, you know, I call them kidney recipients, trying to give people a mental hook to hang something on. Kidney recipients are those people you would give both kidneys to in a flash. And those are not the people who are on the exco of the company you work for. And if you're on the exco, you better believe me, you are not one of the kidney recipients of your employees. And the third thing that drives how we feel about our...
Stef, you've just got to give a few guys on the exco an opportunity to just let that sink in.
Dude,
they think they're super special in their staff.
If you're on the senior leadership team of an organization, if you're on the senior team, there are people who are not even throwing in $10 for the flowers when you need a kidney. And we think that people are so engrossed in our... Graeme, we're all over the show, but give me a few minutes and I'll try and draw a line here that we can navigate. And
there's some great questions coming. You said there were 3, right?
Keep an eye on the time here now, but now we're a little bit more diversified here. So let me try and weave all of this together. Let me try and bring all of this together again.
I interrupted you. So I'm going to get you back.
Okay, no, it's okay. I made the assertion that that leaders are not on the kidney recipient list of their employees, except of course if it's a family business. But let's get serious about this and go faster. leaders wish that their people cared more about their work and the workplace. And that's a realistic wish. But if you read David Graeber's work, that professor at the London School of Economics, his book, Bullshit Jobs, helped me to understand that everyone is trapped in a bullshit job. We just don't demonstrate that we know that we're trapped in bullshit jobs where we are rolling like King Sisyphus of Greek mythology, rolling this boulder up the hill every day, only for it to roll down again overnight so that we can roll it up again. And Graeber says, and I agree with him, most people feel like that about their work, but we've conditioned and been conditioned and programmed to recognize that it doesn't make, it's not a business career advancing move to recognize that in the workplace. So we keep silent about it, and we never say that we feel that our job is bullshit. Let's get into some of the real stuff, and I'll get back to the three things, Graeme. Graeber says your job can become unbullshitted by you doing one of two things: figuring out how your job benefits other people, or figuring out how your job makes the world better. Figure out one of those two answers, and your job is no longer bullshit. Backing up, how you feel about your life. I call it life score, how you quantify how your life is going. Most folk, and I'm not being judgmental here, but through my work, I know most folk don't consciously calculate their life score, how their work and their life at work and play and at home is going on a day-to-day basis. But it's in the back of our minds. And I always used to say we figured it out while we're stuck in the traffic on the way to work in the morning. Now that we're not stuck in the traffic, we're still in the traffic. It's when we're feeding the kids in the morning or doing homeschooling or that minute before you roll over and sleep at night. We are always self-obsessing about how our life is going. There are three things that influence how your life is going: your relationship with God or the universe, your relationship with the people who matter most to you, and your relationship with the people at work. I want to argue, Graeme, that because we spend so much time at work, even virtually, when we work virtually, because we spend so much time on work, the third one most influences your life score. When your job sucks, your life sucks. When your job is going well, your life improves. All we have to do is help employees to understand that doing their job better, living our values, driving our strategic objectives, fighting for the culture to be better, stopping being uninvolved, becoming emotionally engaged in the business, developing a profound connection with a brand, improves my life at home. It improves my life score. It makes my relationships better. Typically, we take what's left of us home every night after a long day at work, even virtually, after a long day at a keyboard. We give what's left to our people. How about if we could integrate this so that we can be left with something to take home, Graeme, that makes us live up to the promises we made, that makes us be the people that we said we would be. And the compelling reason to drive workplace culture, to improve engagement, is not that people care about the business or its strategy. It's about the fact that the only way you make your life better is when you do your job better. One last thing while I mentioned Graeber. I often, let me make this shorter. I became let me go faster. I think I have always thought that the pursuit of purpose and meaning at a personal level, at a leader level, at a team level, and in organizations, that the pursuit of purpose and meaning, and even tech companies or name an enterprise that is not specifically involved with, now I said tech companies don't make the world better. Even organizations that don't actually make the world better, make the world better by how they treat the people who work there, how people treat their colleagues, and how empty or full that colleague is when they get to go home at night. Every job can benefit other people. Graeme, let me finish this thought for us. It was Frankel's work that got me to understand that our primary motivational drive in life is the pursuit of purpose and meaning. He said we can do two things. Now, this is going to sound like an echo here. We can do two things to find purpose and meaning for our lives. We can commit ourselves to people other than ourselves, or commit ourselves to a cause greater than ourselves. And I'm just wondering whether David Graeber didn't also read Frankel's book, because he said, how your job benefits other people or how it makes the world better. It's the same things. Graeme, when we came into this COVID thing, and I won't go there now unless maybe in questions and answers we do. When we came into this COVID thing, I wondered whether I shouldn't hush my voice on these things because of the gravity of what's going on in the world. I was very conscious of the fact that maybe my voice just isn't relevant at this time. And I dug deep and found that maybe it is, because nothing has changed, Graeme. In this time, more than in any other time in our lives, it is the pursuit of purpose and meaning that will find a way through where we are going. And I want to say that in the absence, yes, futurist, Stef, in the absence of knowing how we benefit other people or how we make the world better, Graeme, it's all worth naught. And we will not find a path through what lies ahead of us in the absence of answering those two questions. Graeme, back at you.
Stef, brilliant. Thank you. There have been a number of comments and questions, and I'm going to summarize one or two of them, and I know that you would want an opportunity to respond to a person who's made a comment, DJ.
I'm going to make a note so that I can answer them.
No, you'll be fine. I'll give them to you one at a time. Andrew asked a little while ago, is employee engagement worthy of a strategic drive by companies at this time? You know, when their greatest concern is saving the workplace. And I want to link this to what DJ said. So DJ was saying, no, this is a little bit of old thinking. He made a comment. Then he came back and he said, no, we've heard this stuff before. And I know that that's not a threatening comment to you, because we've heard this stuff actually for 100 years throughout the entire industrial revolution and the post-industrial world that we've been in. So I want to combine that comment and that question. Why is this still important, and why should it be even maybe more important in a COVID crisis and a virtual working environment? And why is it that we should go back and take some of that stuff we have been saying for a while, take it maybe even more seriously now?
There are two very diverse questions in here, or two conversations in here. I'm going to frame it as these two questions. I'll do the second one first. DJ, reach out to me if we need to have a conversation after. I would be very happy. I would love to. I am not taking a go at DJ here because it's very easy for me. I have the floor. I have the voice. DJ can't, on this platform, voice his opinion. DJ, I'm not taking a stab at you. Yes, we've heard this all before. And yes, we know the stuff. But I just want to ask, and not at DJ specifically, I ask leaders this every afternoon. I said afternoon because just this afternoon, I'm working with a leadership team virtually. So we know all of this stuff, and it's soft, and it's fuzzy. It doesn't add to the bottom line. And my question to leaders is, so how is it working out for you not paying attention to these things? Like, we confuse engagement with having, these are engagement issues, but we confuse engagement with having good canteens and having childcare facilities at work or having recognition programs. That's not engagement. Engagement is about getting people to do worthwhile work. Engagement is about getting people to bring their best version of themselves to work. Engagement is about having people not running on empty. Graeme, this is another conversation that you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, but you and I once spoke about white knuckling it. The AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, recognize that you can't white knuckle yourself through real life issues. You need help. You need to reach out and build this. You need a sponsor, says the AA. Graeme, I work with so many people in so many different roles in so many businesses in different countries, and the number of people who are white knuckling through their lives and through their careers, most people are just hanging on. And if that's a generalization, then I'm sorry. So is it relevant at this time? Like, more than ever. Because if at this time we don't give our people the capacity to choose better behaviors, to choose to be more on board, to choose to contribute more, to choose to be a part of the solution, we doomed and we lost. That's my best angle at this.
No, it's Steph, I agree with that. And Andrew, this is my response in that space. If this was just 8 or 12 weeks, if it was 2 or 3 months, then you can white knuckle. We all have to do that sometimes. I started life as a chartered accountant, and you have year ends, so there's an audit year end, and you basically say goodbye to your family for a few weeks, and you say, we've got to get this done. If Steph, you were married to a nurse and a medical professional, and there'd be times in her career where she would say, guys, the next week or two is just, it's hell for me at work. And you say, you just treat them gently when they get home, put them to bed, wake them up, get them back to work. And then you get a chance to breathe, right? Often you would take a holiday after that. Your boss would call everybody. We used to have those legendary audit lunches. That's how old I am. I can remember audit lunches. And it was this breather. And everybody would say, phew, that's over. Then you can get into a little bit of recovery mode, and then you're back into normal work again.
Graeme.
We're not going to get to recovery mode if we keep going at the same pace in COVID-19 for the next 18 months.
I typically don't make corrections on small things like this. I just have to correct this because I'm guessing that there are a bunch of folk who are attending today because of my invite to them, so they know me, and they're going to wonder, if you're saying I'm married to a nurse, they're going to wonder, like, how come they thought I was married to a doctor? This faux pas. I know this.
Medical profession.
I know this.
But Maureen, I in fact, you know what? Most doctors upgrade to nurse anyway. A better class of person.
That's the funny thing. Graeme, you might not remember this. Maureen, my wife, specialized in infectious diseases.
I do remember that, yeah.
And was the chief medical officer of the infectious diseases hospital. She treated the first AIDS patient on the continent. The stuff that's happening now is stuff that she knows about, and the good news is, and let me not express a medical opinion, I'm not doing that. But the good news is, it's not the virus, it's the stuff that comes around the virus. Graeme, let me try and be relevant and see if I can make some sense to some of the folks still watching. I sit in the corner office on the top floor of the poshest building in London with an executive of a very major corporation who is telling me gleefully about how he is being flown to Italy to go and fetch his latest car because he's bought 5 from this Italian manufacturer in a row. They now take him there to go meet the crew that built his car. And he says he has a dilemma. I say, what's the dilemma? He says he hasn't decided whether the trim in the inside of the car, the paneling must be gunmetal gray or whether it must be rosewood. And I say, is there a financial implication? He says, no, not really. The one he really wants, the gunmetal gray, costs only £23,000 more than the other one, but he likes. And I'm scheming to myself, for the folk not who don't speak South African, I'm thinking to myself, £23,000, not a big decision. It's a big decision, but not for him. And then we talk about his job and his life, and then he tells me how he hates his job. And then he weeps as he tells me how he's messed up his relationships. No, Graeme, this is not old stuff. People are running on empty. Not everyone, but people are running on empty. And we used to run on empty because we were overworked. We're running on empty now because we overstretched. We are just being pulled in so many directions. And if in this time we do not consciously create an environment within which people can process-driven frame a reality that helps them to understand how their job, how their life at home, at work, and at play fits together, how we can make conscious decisions to change some of our behaviors, and how doing so is the lifeline for ourselves and the business. Besides all of which, Graeme, people who are healthy physically and emotionally do better work. So if we can connect these dots, it makes a business case. And I'm guessing that the corporations who engage our services do so because it makes a business case to them. I want to throw in one thing here that might be helpful to the 2 comments that you mentioned earlier. Earlier in the conversation, you asked about, you didn't use these words, but somebody changing by default. You didn't use that word, but like a change in environment will change how they think and behave. Yes, that'll happen, but I said it has to be more conscious for it to be lasting. Graeme, the literature suggests that people change. Why am I talking about change? We're talking about changing people to become more engaged, changing people to ramp up their work-life integration, changing people so that they can fight for a better workplace culture. Graeme, they say that the literature says that change happens because of one of four reasons. I'm going to ramble them very quickly. If people are making notes, you don't have to note this down. It's not that important. They change because of a near-death experience, a life-changing event, a religious experience, or because of personal willpower. Graeme, I disagree with the literature. Rich for me to say so. I think there is one primary reason that causes people to change in life and in work: when they choose to change. I think that there are four reasons that cause people to choose to change: how they integrate their work in their life and how engaged they are at work. I think there are four reasons that cause people to choose to change. I'm going to plagiarize the first three off that other list first. People choose to change because of a near-death experience, a life-changing event, a religious experience, or people choose to change because of the influence of another human being. And if we can live purposeful lives, we will behave in ways that will cause other people to aspire to be more like us. That's what leadership is about. And if we can demonstrate behaviors like that, then we will naturally influence people to change their behaviors as well. Graeme, how do we get through these times when people are overworked and stretched, when they are teacher, home carer? Graeme, I always think of the single mothers. I employ a single mother. I always wonder how they cope, dude, because like, that's God's work, being a single parent. And they are so stretched at this time. I don't think they come out the other side whole if they do not connect the dots between their life and their work, if they don't integrate it, if they don't figure out how their life benefits other people in the world, if they don't figure out how their job benefits other people in the world. And I think those dotted lines are shorter than we realize, because all I have to do is lighten the load of my colleague at the desk next to me or at the email address next to me in the virtual world. And if I do my job in a way that eases the load of other people, I can finish my day recognizing that I have added value to someone else's life. They are less broken by the time they have to read bedtime stories tonight. And dude, if all of this is too light, I'll just keep on practicing it for myself, because this is better than how it used to be for me.
No, Stef, I think you make a great point, and there's lots of lovely comments coming through. A private question that was sent to you, maybe by mistake made private, so I just won't mention the name just in case. Somebody asked, does this look different then at different levels of leadership? So I can see maybe how a team leader could be inspired to listen to what you're saying and saying, okay, so my job is not just to make sure my team is productive, giving me 8 hours of keyboard time or whatever, but that my team are well-rounded people, surviving the day, and so on. Then if you go up to supervisor level or senior leader, does the message change? Are there different things for different levels of leaders to do here in response to what we're hearing from you today?
I think the enormity of the burden of responsibility increases as we become more senior. Graeme, give me a time check here. I can unpack this, but I want to be conscious of the time.
No, we're fine. If people have, I'm not tired of our conversation. If other people have got places to go, they can go. We can go for it.
In case you haven't noticed yet, I'm a 60-year-old white Afrikaans man. I'm South African. So that meant that after school, I was conscripted to the army. And I went there for 2 years, and people have forgotten. I either went there or they sent me to jail for 3 years. Very long story, very short. I had nowhere to go when my time was up, so I stayed there a while longer. I met my wife, that doctor that we had referred to earlier. She studied at Wits. So she's a blue blood communist. Okay, just a chirp. And for the first time in my life, I started experiencing in my mid-20s, I started experiencing the other side of the fence, the other side of the railway line, where I had come from. I had been taught the words, the vocabulary, the mindsets that led me to frame the realities that I bought into. And only after meeting her did I become conscious of the alternative mindsets that exist. Why I'm going there is why I'm unpacking this is because Graeme, you know this as a friend. I had deep personal conversations with you, asking for your advice, because for those folk watching, so that they know, you are one of the very few people who I phone when I need a real answer, or when I more so have a real personal dilemma. And when COVID started, I was worried that my message of engagement, leadership, teams, of our work in the culture space, I was worried that it was, as I said earlier, that it had become, Graeme, help me with the word, that it had become irrelevant at this time because of the bigger issues going on in the world. And so I dug deep. And so I came to realize, but wait, I know stuff about coping with the current reality as well. I was deeply schooled in dealing with fear and uncertainty, because I didn't only do those 2 conscription years. I stayed there for extra years because I had nowhere to go. Long story behind that. We don't have the time for that now. And in case I forget to say so later, there were 2 wars going on in the 23-year war that happened on the northern border of what was then Southwest Africa. They were parallel. It was the same war, but I now know that there were 2 wars. The one war was against the Russians, who were trying to dominate the subcontinent because they wanted the minerals here. And in that war, I fought on the right side. The other war was the war for the freedom of the people on the subcontinent. And in that war, I found myself on the wrong side. I speak only for myself. And if there are men of my age group listening who differ, let us all figure this out for ourselves. But in one of the wars, I was on the wrong side. I only learned that later. I ended up in elite units. I became an officer. Then people won't remember, Graeme, but after those conscription years and after the few extra years that I spent there, we had to go back every year for 12 years, 1 or 3 months a year, every year for 12 years. And I did those 12 years. And then I volunteered because the democracy was on the horizon, and I wanted to serve into the new South African National Defence Force. Let me get to the point. I ended up as a lieutenant colonel. I was the battalion commander of an elite unit, of a parachute battalion. Why am I telling you all of that nonsense? Because I learned there, I fought in the last 10 years of that war. I was the last combatant commander left on the ground at the end of that war. And in those years, I learned how to deal with fear, with angst, and with the burden of leadership. Because when I made poor decisions, people died on both sides. But in the 30 years that I've been doing this work, I have never referenced what I learned there as a part of my content or my teachings, or I just left it there. I never spoke about those things. I never rationalized it. I applied them to my own life daily, what I learned there. But I never used it in dialogue with people. So when Corona came, I thought that maybe I should go and dig there to find answers for leaders, how we can cope in these times. And you ask about level of leadership, Graeme. I remember one instance where I had to fill 2 helicopters with men on perhaps the most crazy mission that I was ever involved with. Those helicopters fly 14 people per helicopter. I needed 28 men, including myself. I needed 27. Where we were going was so scary. I did something that military commanders would scoff at. I separated the married men from the single men, and then from the single men, I told them, those men who had children, to step aside. And then from those single fatherless men, I asked for 27 volunteers. And when more than double that number stepped forward, I understood for the first time in my life what bravery is about. Bravery is about doing what lies ahead of you when you are most afraid, because that's what you need to do. And that's what we have to do during COVID. I think I have a message for leaders in this time. Do what's in front of you. Do it now, because we are being defined by how we behave now. But that's not relevant enough. Let me see if I can make it more relevant. I think the burden of responsibility that comes with senior leaders now is massive. Because if we do not save our enterprises, people are going to lose their jobs. Forget about your share value. Forget about the value of your share. Forget about your retirement plan. Think about the fact that people are going to lose their jobs if we don't save our businesses. You ask me, Graeme, if it is is it different for different leaders? I think the burden of responsibility at top leadership role comes at an enormous price right now. And I think that care for our people is the single most important leader behavior that leaders need to demonstrate now. 40 seconds, I'll be done with this piece. I heard Colin Powell, who was the #1 soldier in America way back. I heard him do a leadership talk once, and then I recognized a lot of myself in it. When I was still learning to become a drill instructor, one of the things that they beat into me was, when I am tired and cold and afraid, never show my people that I am tired and cold and afraid. It was when I listened to Colin Powell speak that I realized there's a flip side. I need to demonstrate to my people that I care about them enough that I can understand that they are cold and tired and afraid, without them knowing that I am cold and tired and afraid. And Colin Powell helped me to understand, if I can get that mix right, then people will follow me into the darkest night, as he says, into the deepest valley and up the highest mountain. Here's my point. Right now, the more senior you are, the less you need to demonstrate that you are cold or tired or afraid. And it's a metaphor, you know what I mean. The more you need to demonstrate how much you care for your people at this time. I'm working with a leadership group who is trying to make the decision, do they take salary sacrifices now or not? In my view, how can they not take salary sacrifices when we are trying to survive in our business so that we can save jobs? But as you come down the ranks, your role as a leader continues to be weighted by responsibility. And if you're a team leader responsible for just a few folk, your job is to stand between them and everything else that is external, and to protect them. How? By demonstrating care of proportions that we have never demonstrated before, of recognizing that our people are battling now, of knowing that some days, that some of those folk who work for us remotely, that some days we just need to leave them alone and give them space, while at the same time holding people accountable for delivery. Because if everyone does not deliver now, we're not going to make it. Graeme, I hope that in there was a thread of sane dialogue, which, if I had to summarize, would be, the question was, is it different for leaders at different levels? Hell yeah. Because in good times, the more senior you are, the posher you are, the more shares you get and the fancier car you drive. Right now, I think it's turned around. Right now, I think the more senior you are, the more you need to dig deep and be that type of courageous, authentic leader that people need to follow now. Because in your absence, there's nothing.
Stef, I knew it would be worth speaking to you. I knew that people would love listening to you. We've got some wonderful comments coming through in the chat. Yes, for those who have asked, a recording is going to be available for this. Go to graemecodrington.com/webinars and just follow the link to the recording. It'll be up in a few hours for those of you who are with us live. It'll be on YouTube as well. Thank you. Please do share this with your team, with your boss, with your staff. This issue of workplace engagement is now more important than it's ever been. And I wanted you to meet probably the person who is most passionate about it in the world that I know of anyway. And you've seen that passion come through in the last hour together. Stef, a final word from you. And I know that there's never a short final word from you. So take the time that you want. You get the last word. But I'm going to show you a softball to say, what's the most important thing for us to do right now? as we face an uncertain future. And with that, when you've finished, we'll say goodbye.
As I said before, but I have to make sure that it was heard in case someone was just multitasking at the time or was away from the screen for a moment. Again, in the 30 years I have been doing what I do now, I have never referenced what I learned as a soldier in my current work. I'm starting to weave that in because I think it's relevant right now. I remember that every time I parachuted into an operation, like the leaders who I followed, I would jump first. It means that there comes a time when you are standing in the door of the aircraft and the wind is gushing by and the noise is deafening. And above you, there's a little light which will change between red and green at the flick of a switch by the pilot when he knows that he's over the drop zone. And in the door, there's a dispatcher that stays on board the plane, does not jump, and he dispatches you. And I remember standing in the door more than once, too afraid to jump, with a backpack strapped to my legs that weighs more than my own body weight. And then as the light changes and the dispatcher slaps me on the back and he says, go, then I step into the void because that's what's expected of me in that moment. If I had one overall message for everyone dealing with the struggles we are dealing with right now, it's to step into the void. Make an extra food parcel. Donate an extra $25. Spend an extra 15 minutes with your kids tonight. Be gentler with your life partner. Understand the pressure that your boss is under. Understand the pressure that everyone is under. But at the same time, like this is gender neutrally said, man up and step into the void so that all of us can do the things that we need to do. And I'll wrap with this at the risk of turning this political. And that's a silly thing to do. While I personally do not agree with everything that our government is doing right now, my job is to be a decent citizen. So speaking for myself, I'm staying home, I'm being safe, and I'm trying to support our leadership. That's what's demanded of us now. And that's it. Except to say, be well, good luck, good riddance, and stay safe.
Stef, thank you so much. To everybody who's watching, either joined us live, thank you, and thanks for all of your comments and encouragement. To those who might watch the video later, this is what Stef does. He kind of gets under your skin, he motivates you, he inspires you to be a better human being, to make your workplace a better place for yourself and for others, and therefore to make the world a better place for all of us to live in. This is what he does. You can see he does it brilliantly. He's got his home studio all set up. He is part of a group you can see in the background called South Africa's Best Speakers. Search for Stef du Plessis. You can see his details in the chat box if you have access to that on the replay, or just search for SA's Best Speakers or Stef du Plessis. You'll be able to find him. And yeah, get him in to speak to your leadership team. Think about engaging with each other and with your teams in this time.
On that note, Graeme, like you, we're doing all of this virtually right now. I'm doing town halls with our clients. I'm doing leadership retreats with our leadership teams. Like you, Graeme, I mean, together we've pivoted completely so that there's nothing that we used to do that we can't do in this new digital age. Steve, my partner, the Australian guy, and I did a fully participative session with a group this morning, flip chart and all, and
old school, right?
Some of us are thinking that it's the tech let us down this morning. The tech let us down. We rehearsed the whiteboard feature and we rehearsed it hours before, and in the session it let us down. Always good to have some old school stuff. If I can do anything for you, even if just to shoot the breeze, give you some resources, give you extra videos to watch. During this time, I've gifted some of my resources to folk who need it at this time. Reach out. If I can help you, I will. Graeme, thanks for having me, buddy.
Thanks, Stef. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for the inspiration. I feel much better for our time together. I'm sure everybody else does. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. It's been great being in conversation again.